Yo, what's up, hoop heads from around the globe? And this is Buzzer Beaters. I am Eddie Aparicio. This is my co-host, Anthony Toine Corral. And this is our walk around the NCAA tournament. So
Yes.
last weekend, Toine and I went up to Reno. And this was Toine's first time going with us. And we've been going there for about 10 years, almost,
Yeah, it was my
almost
first
10
time.
years. I got to
Yeah.
tell you, this is probably an experience for him, right? We actually left after our podcast last week. We ended up like around 7:15ish, and then Twan had to get an Uber to get over here, and then we went and drove up from Reno from Pleasanton, which is about a 3-hour drive. And then of course Twan, got hungry along the way, so we had to stop. And then
Yeah,
of
I
course
gotta
I had to
eat.
charge, so we ended up getting there past midnight, and we went ahead and got together, and my brother-in-law and another buddy was there, and we went ahead and did a draft. Okay,
We
now
did. We did.
yeah, so just so you know, so for those of you that watched our show, we do this fantasy we Twan and I do this rookie league for NBA, and we draft, four players from the first round and then one player from the second round, and we keep track of the stats throughout the entire year. And this is our
Correct.
second year of doing it, right? And we
Correct.
we also do our player greatness index that kind of uses the same scoring system. So I use the same scoring system that's very common in the daily fantasy sports. So what we do is we draft the NCAA players for the tournament. We only do like 5 players per person. So that's 20 people or 20 players that get drafted. And we did that like around
Correct.
12:30 at night. So we were both dragging when we went ahead and did this. But my brother-in-law got first pick, the other buddy got second pick, I got third pick, and then Twan got the fourth pick. And we do a serpentine just like a regular fantasy, football or fantasy basketball draft.
Yep.
So that's what we went ahead and did. And
Yep.
then we
Yep.
went ahead and did this, and then I think this helped us kind of focus on some of the players because we got to be honest. Twan and I don't watch every freaking game, right? We just
Yeah.
don't watch every game. It's too hard to watch all the college games, right? We start getting into the games when the tournament comes around. So this helped us kind of watch players very closely.
Yeah.
So
Familiarize us.
yeah, so I want to before we get into it, Twan, what we're going to go ahead and focus is we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the players that we watched, including those
Yes.
that were on our team, and which ones stood
Yes.
out to us, right? Which ones
Correct.
out of the top 30, which ones are projecting the top 30 projected to be in the NBA draft? Which ones to us stood out? We're also going to
Correct.
talk about some other guys that did they pass the eye test, right? And then the other thing is, there are other players that weren't even on this list that had really good weekends. And
Yeah.
we're going to go ahead and talk about that. So before we get into it, Twan, how was your experience up there, man? I want to get your
Oh,
take on how things went up there
no,
for you.
I mean, I liked it. I liked it. It was all good. Reno was a little rougher than I remember in terms of it's people meandering about, but it was all good. It was warmer than I suspected. You
Yeah,
guys
me
had
too.
said that usually there's snow up there or it's pretty cold. I mean, I think when we got up there, it never dropped below 70 in the day. It was like 75, 80. So that was good. We headed up to the sports book. I enjoyed that experience, all the TVs, Eddie's got me on a little bit of the, in terms of experience with the gambling, the guys up there are a little more familiar. So they were just kind of bringing me up to speed on in play versus kind of I'm more familiar with the traditional way of betting, but I
Right.
was checking a look at the in play, so I thought that was kind of cool. It was hard to, as Eddie said, we drafted, 5 players apiece, which made it particularly interesting to focus on your players. But like when you're watching all the games, it was kind of hard to capture like everyone and see what they were doing. But
Yes.
overall, I did see some players. I thought, I found it interesting that there was some players that weren't even on this 30 list. That one in particular that I thought stood out. But again, you got to look at this from in terms of NBA, right? Are they NBA ready? How is it that they're scoring? How is it that they're, are they too slow? Are they too big? What's their lateral speed like? Is their shot really slow to develop? I mean, all of these things that really matter in the NBA, they've got a little bit more leniency or there's more forgiveness in the NCAA. But once you start getting with the big boys, everything's got to kind of be on lock because everyone there is an elite athlete.
I agree. I agree. But I got to tell you, bro, I was very much surprised or satisfied at the games that we watched. I mean, some of the games were really, really good. And, some of these buzzer beaters, with the Kentucky and Santa Clara game, I mean, that one was unbelievable. That's arguably one of the better games of the weekend. And just
Yeah.
crazy shots that go in at this time, man. It's crazy. So I
Yeah.
was I really
Yeah,
enjoyed
yeah,
watching the games. And it's especially cool watching the games with you because we do this podcast, right? So it helps us kind of,
correct.
helps us kind of research a little bit for these, the upcoming draft in June. We're going to be a little bit more familiar with these players together, right? Because we did this
Yeah,
at the same time, right? And then of
yeah,
course we did our brackets, right? And last episode of our podcast, we went ahead and did a pretty unique way of doing a brackets pool. And what's interesting is that the Cisco Kidz brackets pool, it's actually doing pretty dang good. Right now, it's in the 94.5% percentile, and it's in 1.5 millionth place out of 30 million brackets. Okay,
yeah,
that's impressive. Okay, I did one on ESPN, and mine's at 90 percentile. So the Cisco Kidz combined bracket is better than the one I did on my own. And that one
correct.
is good for being in 2.7 million place out of 30 million on ESPN. So 30 million brackets at 1.5 million plays, that's pretty damn good, man. So, but the way we went ahead and established the way we did this, just to summarize, is that, Toine did a bracket, I did a bracket. And then when there was a dispute, when we were different, we kind of looked at the best players of all time from that school in the NBA, and
Yeah,
whoever was the more dominant one would get the selection. That's our shared
correct.
bracket.
Yep,
And unfortunately, through this process, Gonzaga, because of John Stockton, went all the way to the finals.
they
Happened to
lost.
Gonzaga, they lost, right? So
Correct.
that 94.5 percentile is going to be dropping in the next couple of weeks. So, but I think we're still doing pretty good in general, man. I mean, a lot of people's brackets got busted too with the number one seed Florida Gators getting eliminated, and that was a big loss. So anyway, so I just wanted to bring that up on the brackets and, tune in on how we went about doing that. But anyway, so let's get into it, bro.
Okay,
So the first thing is I want to kind of go over the draft that we did. Okay. Now, the way we did this is that we did 5 players for each of us. The number one pick was done by my brother-in-law. The second pick was done by the buddy. His name was Hondro. And then I was third, and then Toine was fourth. So in the
correct.
order, this is how we drafted the players. So the number one pick, we drew numbers, right? And then, blindly
Okay.
gave it out. And so my brother-in-law got the first pick. His first pick was Cameron Boozer. Then the second pick was Braden Burries of Arizona. Then the third pick was Keaton Wagler of Illinois. And then the fourth pick, which was you, Toine, you had Thomas Haw
Yep,
of Florida. And then you got the next pick after that, which is Jeremy Pierce. Then it went
yep,
back to me with Braden Smith, then Yaxel Lendenborg of Michigan, and then it went to Joshua Jefferson of for my brother-in-law. And unfortunately, he got hurt, so he was lost for the entire rest of the tournament. He missed the next game, and so that pretty much made my brother-in-law's team just kind of just go to nothing. And then Kingston Flemings was drafted after that. Then AJ Dybantsa of BYU was number 10, BYU of 10. Isaiah Evans of Duke was 11th. Graham Ike or Ike of Gonzaga
yep,
was 12th. And that was on your team, Toine.
yep,
And then Otega Owen was also on your team,
correct.
Toine, and monster first game. Okay.
Yep,
Then Emmanuel Sharp of Houston was in the 14th pick. Darren Peterson of Kansas was the 15th pick. Donovan Dent of UCLA, of course, UCLA. He has to be because he's from UCLA, and we all know about UCLA guys. They really fall in love and are enamored with their players. And then the one thing he picked this player that wasn't on the list because just so
correct.
everybody knows, the buddy brings up this big old poster and he has all these names that are
Yep,
on there, and he's kind of put some notes like, these guys are the top seed guys, the second seed guys, third seed guys, and then he also kind of projects if they're going to be drafted or not. So it kind of helps you but there's one write-in, and the one write-in was, the guy that has all these nicknames from the St. Louis Billikens or whatever their name was.
yeah, the Billikens.
Roberto Avila, and he has a bunch of names, man.
Oh, dude,
Cream,
hilarious.
Abdul-Jabbar. He has
Yep,
a Steph Blurry because he has these shades, right?
yep,
And we also dubbed him Dr. Way instead of Dr.
yeah,
J, Dr. Way. So we had
Yep.
all these interesting names. But anyway,
Larry Nerd,
Larry Nerd,
the
incredible.
Mexican Joker, or the Mexican Jokish.
yeah.
Dude,
I mean, he was. So he was the highlight of our weekend in terms of
big
players
time.
to watch. Yeah,
Because he was being hyped up, and my brother, because he just keeps on. Once he has something, he just keeps at it the entire weekend, man. And he was just pumping this guy up the
no,
entire.
he did an excellent job of getting us hyped. I'll tell you that.
Exactly. So we were all like,
Yeah.
we gotta watch this guy, and I gotta
Gotta
give
watch
it
this
to you,
guy.
bro. That guy can pass, man. I mean,
Yes.
he's not NBA ready, but that dude can pass. I can see why he's getting the Mexican Jokic kind of
Yeah.
reference because the dude has got some vision, man. So after Avila was at number 18 was Darius Acuff of Arkansas, and that got a monster second game of the weekend. So,
Correct.
and then the 19th pick was Koa Pete of Arizona, who's on my team. And then the last pick was Darius Reed of UConn, and this guy actually had the biggest game of the tournament.
Right.
The last pick. So what happened is that
Actually, both games were pretty. He was pretty decent.
yes, I
Yeah.
agree with you, man. So, but he had the highest output out of everybody in our fantasy scoring, right? So he had like 63.8 points or something crazy like that. But Toine ended up winning because we only decided to do it for the first weekend. And, I wanted to go for further throughout the entire weekend because if that were the case, bro, you'd be screwed because you have two guys that are eliminated on your team
Yeah.
already, right?
Well, I think that's the point, right? That the whole point of only doing
Yeah.
it on the weekend was it made it fair so everyone at least stood a pretty good chance of at least having two games. Although, as we'll get into, I think Dybantsa only had one game. BYU lost in its first game.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so there's a couple of players that were upset, and that's the way it calls. But I did like the whole weekend. We talked about doing it just one for the weekend and one for the whole tournament. But the challenge with the whole tournament is with the upsets and you losing players and things
Yes.
like that.
Yes.
That just becomes a little difficult to map.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, Twan, in full disclosure here, man, I drafted the team as if we're going to play the entire tournament because I was going to try and like convince you guys that we should do it for the entire tournament, right? But I'm still going to go ahead and keep track just so I can make the point that we should have two different, one for the weekend and one for the entire, right? Do two different pools. But anyway, so I just wanted to go ahead and point out that we had a fun weekend, and Twan ended up winning. He won the $80. His team scored 378 points, and his team was Thomas Howell, Jeremy Fears, Graham Ike, Otega Owen, and Terrace Reed. And then my team was Keaton Wagler, Braden Smith, Isaiah Evans, Emmanuel Sharp, and Koa Pete. So I came in third. But it was fun, man. Like I said, we picked these guys, and it helps us stay focused on the players and the teams that are playing. And it just kind of keeps you more interested, right? When you have some action, you're definitely more interested, bro. All right, bro. So let me ask you something. So, okay, the projected top 30, I sent you the list. Okay. What I want to get your opinion on are out of these guys. I mean, you can focus on the guys you drafted or others, but I want to kind of get your take on some of the guys that you thought really stood out based on the top 30 that are projected based on what AI says are the top 30 projected.
Yeah. So I'll start with the ones that kind of didn't impress me, or
Okay.
the one player who, Cameron Boozer was not overly impressed.
I agree with you, bro.
Now I'm gonna preface this by saying that I'm only focused on the tournament games, right?
Yes.
Duke had two subpar games, in my opinion, to
Yes.
start the
Yes.
tournament. They're still in it. That could change as we go along, but I'm talking at the 2-game mark. So Cameron Boozer was one that stood out to me as, where's all the hype? Like he's okay. Dybantsa, who's kind of, is it Dybantsa? Dybantsa, yeah. He was knocked out in the first game. He was a good player. He had a good skill set, but he was knocked out in the first game. So it was kind of hard to track him at that point. Just kind of had the one game. Peterson was an interesting one to me from Kansas. The guy is definitely a skilled scorer.
Okay, he takes time off, right? He takes plays off. He's kind of
that's what he seems very lackadaisical.
Yes.
His game in terms of his ability to score and the way he moves reminded me of Jamal Crawford. He kind of had this Jamal Crawford-esque kind of thin and wiry and could get it up at any time. So I could see him from a scoring perspective as being pretty good. Acuff was definitely
absolutely Acuff. Yeah,
he was probably the one that I would say was, in my opinion, if I was drafting just off of those games, he'd be in the top 1 or 2 of players that I would draft just based on that information, right? Not the whole season. And then let's see, let me work down the line here. Disappointed in Thomas Haw. He was one of my players. Yes. Florida got knocked out. He didn't seem aggressive enough to me. He was kind of floating around. And
yes, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, he was trying to create plays, but he wasn't really pressing the issue. If you're a top offensive player on your team, at times you got to feel out how the team is doing and you got to take control. And he really didn't do that. The other one that
before you move on, bro, because what I wanted to, you touched upon a few players that I was going to bring up too.
Yeah. Let me take a pause. Yep.
So real quick, I want to tell you that, I watched, you and I were watching it from an NBA point of view, right? Like as a scout, right? And I got to tell you, man, even though his team lost in the first round, that dude, AJ Dybantsa, has got some game, dude. That guy stood out to me like, oh my God, this guy's super athletic. And then, of course, you were saying, yeah, but his team got bounced. That kind of shows me kind of like the same Ben Simmons and Brandon Ingram, right?
Yeah, well, let me let me rewind.
Yes.
One of the things that I look for in players is their ability to move their team. Now, I'm not
Yes.
saying he's not a gamer. What I'm saying is that when you get to that level and you need a player that's going to elevate the organization, because typically the people that are drafting early in the draft are teams
Yes.
that are sucky, and so they're looking for someone that's going to elevate. And to me, if that player gets knocked out or doesn't make the tournament or gets knocked out in the first round, it's a nitpicky thing, but I think it's a thing about leadership, bringing your team together, taking over at the right. There's a lot of qualities that you look for, especially when they got upset. So for me,
Yeah.
yes, he's a talented player, but the NBA is full of talented players that don't do anything. So to me, if you just want to score or someone that's a great player, then definitely go with him. I'm not even saying that he can't be a leader. Those are just things that I look at and go, okay, this one I'm going to rate low right now because of
Yeah.
the way that things played out. Doesn't mean I wouldn't take him. Doesn't mean that I think he's trash. I think he's a good player, but those are the things. And you're referring back to the Ben Simmons Ingram conversation that we
Yes.
had, because the year that
Yes.
Simmons was drafted, I was
Yes.
like, yeah, I wouldn't take him first because he couldn't even get his LSU team into the into the tournament. Like they didn't
Yeah.
even make the tournament. I'm
No,
like,
they
what
didn't.
kind of player, and so that was my position, right? And so this is kind of what I look at, just in dividing and in splitting hairs. You take Curry, for example, which was drafted 7th. He carried a Davidson team that had no business being where they were. He
Right.
carried them as deep as they possibly could. And so he was showing his ability to lead, perform, do all of this in the biggest stage. And that's really what I wanted to point out, was just that impact.
Yeah. Yeah. But like to me, just like I said, looking from a scout standpoint, just the individual themselves, because sometimes you can't, I mean, that's kind of like a plus minus metrics. It's also dependent on how well the other players on your team are. I mean, if
Correct.
AJ Dybantsa is playing with a bunch of fifth graders, he's going to stand out. But the other guy, if he's playing with a bunch of guys that are more than fifth graders, he ain't going to be able to win the game by himself. He's not,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
So that's, if I'm looking at just him and his skill set visually, that dude's going to be a monster, a monster. I mean,
Yeah.
he just looks so freaking athletic and big, and he's got everything. He can score from all levels, and he can get to the line. I don't know. I was impressed with him. He's the one that stood out to me out of all the guys you mentioned. What's interesting though is that he's projected to be the top pick of the NBA, but in our little draft, he was the 10th pick, and I think partly because BYU, even though the guy who drafted him, he was really in love with BYU. He's always been burnt by BYU. That's why he drafted him, kind of late, right? And then Cameron Bruiser, who was the second pick projected in the NBA draft, he was the first pick, of course, in our little NCAA brackets draft for the players. Darren Peterson was the 15th player draft, and he's projected to be third in the NBA draft, which is interesting. I just want to point some of these things out. Kingston Flemings, he was on my team. He is projected to be the 5th pick out of Houston. And in our league, our little draft that we did, he was drafted 9th. What's interesting, bro, is that Darius Acuff, that guy's stock climbed big time after this tournament. And he is projected to be number 6 as of yesterday, right? He might go up even more if he keeps like bringing his Arkansas Razorbacks further through the tournament. But in our draft, he was the 18th pick. So that's the second to the last guy drafted in our draft. Keaton Wagler of Illinois is number 7. He was drafted 3rd in our little league. And then Braden Burries, he's projected to be 9th in the NBA draft. He was drafted 2nd in our little draft. So interesting another one, Koa Pete, who was on my team out of Arizona. Braden Burries is also Arizona. So interestingly enough, there are 2 guys from the same team in the top 12 in the draft. I don't think there's anybody else that can say that right now. Everybody else is only one player, including Duke. So, so that's interesting. But anyway, so I want to tell you the guy that really stood out for me. Are there other guys that you want to point out before I go to mine?
The only guy that I did want to point out that stood out to me, and he's very low, he's in the 20th, is Yaxel Lussenberg. Led
Yes.
Really, really good NBA guy.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think he's about a 6'8", 6'9" guy, very athletic. He had a monster dunk, but very, very fluid, had a pretty good looking stroke. I wouldn't say he was like out there but in terms of just like physical attributes and the way he moved, the way that his defense was going side to side, I thought he was a good looking player. And I would have thought, just kind of looking at all this, that he would have been ranked higher than the 20th in this draft. I would have maybe predicted him top 10.
Yep. I agree. I agree. I agree. I think his
Yeah.
stock is going to continue to climb. If I were to go ahead and do this, for our next podcast, I can probably show you how much it's going to change. Maybe we should do that. Is kind of compare.
Yeah, maybe we
Yeah.
should.
So
Yeah.
like I can give you, I'm not going to read everybody's top 30, but I gave you some of the guys that were on our team, and these are all guys that we want to track, moving forward of how much their stock rises or falls based on how they perform in the tournament. So another guy that was drafted in our league was Isaiah Evans out of Duke. He's projected to be number 25. He was 11th in our draft. I was watching it pretty closely. He has potential. He seems to be kind of a 3 and D kind of guy, although he doesn't really have the 3 really right now. He's just kind of one of these maybe more athletic defender type that I see. That's what I see Isaiah Evans being. But he definitely had some moments in the tournament, at least in the first 2 games of this of the tournament. So but other than that, man, I would say that we've pretty much covered most of the guys that we watched. Although, one of the arguments that, and just to bring it back to Roberto Avila, my brother-in-law was totally, jacking him up, and of course, had all these nicknames, and he has this look because those freaking, those specs, right? Those freaking thick.
Yeah, he's got the Kareem
goggles, man. And I was watching pretty closely to see if he was NBA ready, right? And he's not NBA ready. Bro.
No, well, I will say that the first game he played was a little deceiving. The team was smaller. The second game that they played against Michigan and the Spaniard Mara, who was at UCLA and is now at Michigan. And Mara's a legit 7-2, and he definitely impacted Avila's ability to play. Definitely, he looked a little lost. And to me, Mara may make the NBA due to size, but in terms of big man ability, he's not comparable to any of the big men in the NBA would run circles around Mara. And if Avila's having issues with him, like, no, forget it. It's just a no-go. But I love all the nicknames and I love the vibe. But
I do too, man. I love the vibe, love the nicknames, and it's cool seeing a Latino, playing out there at a high level because he can't shoot the 3, and his passing is unbelievable, dude. His passing.
And he's got very soft hands, which is really good for a big man.
He's just not athletic.
He's undersized. My guess is he's probably somewhere between 6'8" and 6'10". He is heavy, but as I mentioned to you when I was watching, his gait, his legs are his hips are very.
Well, he's very top heavy.
And so when he so when he does lateral movement, he can't really spread his legs apart too good. So he's very kind of upright. And so he's kind of like, kind of like a robot.
He's top heavy, man.
And so that's going to affect him.
Absolutely. But the one comment that we want to make about him is that there are NBA ready skill sets that he has. He has the shooting, he has the passing. The one thing that I say that he's got to do is change his body, man. Okay. If he can change his body so that he's no longer a center and maybe make him like a small forward type, maybe even a power forward, but he's got to bulk up a little bit. He's got a power forward, height, but he doesn't have the power forward frame, nor I think does he have the inside game to be a productive power forward. So that's why I was saying a small forward might suit him. So he would have to seriously change his body big time. He'd have to go like on the Luka Doncic diet, bro. Right? He has to do something like that to dramatically change his physique so that he can play in the NBA. I wouldn't be surprised, bro. He's going to be in the summer league. We're going to be talking about him as we get closer to the summer league in July. We're going to be talking about, because I think he's going to be on a summer league squad and then I think he's going to go undrafted and he's going to try and get on a squad that way. Right. And
I'll be rooting for him. He's fun to watch. And like I said, he's got a good spot. One guy, Eddie, that I did want to mention, and I forgot his name, and maybe you can remember because your memory's always better than mine, is the guy that I was calling Ryan.
That dude was good. Matas Vukatitis. Matas Vukatitis of Texas.
Yes, he was definitely, he reminded me of like a Filipowski or a Klingon type of kind of big, bulky, took up a lot of space, kind of gets you agitated type of guy. He didn't really have any range, but he was a big man, and I was kind of like, all right, this guy's annoying. He might have something.
He was causing fits. He was causing fits, raising fits for your Graham Ike of Gonzaga, right?
Yes,
he was.
Yes, he was.
He just was. He was in his head a little bit, and that guy is a problem. I think his stock is going to rise because he's currently projected to go undrafted right now. But these things are going to change as we go. And like I said, I think this is a good exercise as we go through the next 2 weeks of the tournament. I will go ahead and keep track of how much this top 30 and undrafted guys, if some of these guys that are go undrafted, if they become on the draft board, right? So,
Yeah.
some other guys that stood out from the weekend. Alex Caravan. By the way, he was a guy out of UConn. I was actually considering to pick him. I was going, man, I know that guy was projected to be drafted even last year, but he decided to stay. And that guy had a huge game in the second game of UConn's. He was like the leading scorer of the game, shooting 3-pointers. He's got an NBA ready game, and he's projected right now to be in the second round. Your boy, Terrace Reed, I was watching him closely
Yes.
too. He's projected to
Yes.
be a second round guy too. He's got I mean, he totally reminds me of, like I said, Ike Diagu kind of guy, right? And Ike Diagu
Yep.
was a serviceable guy. He just wasn't that tall, and he just didn't have an overall game, in my opinion. But this guy, if he works on his shot a little bit, he's got the frame. I think, I mean, he's a rebounding machine, that guy, man. So maybe like a Ben Wallace type.
He is a rebounding machine.
Yeah, he could be like a Ben Wallace type, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't have the outside game, and he doesn't really jump out of the gym either. He's not athletic, but he's got an overall pretty good game.
No.
So
No, he takes up space, right? He's a space eater.
yes,
So he goes in, clears out space just with his body, and is able to get rebounds. Yeah, it'll be interesting because I really got an appreciation for watching the tournament at the depth of this
yes,
draft. Because there's a lot of guys that I'm thinking, hey, maybe they should be drafted. And I look at the projections, and they're not even projected to be drafted. So, to me, it's going to be really interesting because people are going to be able to pick and choose. And these big men that don't really have outside range, it's going to be interesting if they get drafted at all or where.
yes, yes. I agree with you, bro. Another couple guys I want to point out before we end the segment here, bro, is so Jeremy Fears out of your team, out of Michigan State. He's another guy
Yeah.
that is projected to go undrafted right now. And that guy had
And he's pretty decent.
he had 16 assists in the
Yeah,
second game.
yeah.
It's like, man, this guy had a
Yep.
pretty good game, right? So what's interesting, I'm naming Alex Caravan, Terrace Reed, Jeremy Fears, Matas Volkaitis, where you say you go to Texas.
Yes.
All of these guys are
Yep.
second round or undrafted right now. Okay. And these guys are the standouts of the first weekend, right? The other guy I want to bring up is Ade Mata. You already brought him up, right?
Yes.
Out of
Yeah, the Spaniard.
usually he was initially at UCLA, but he's at Michigan now. He's projected to be a second round pick too, which surprises me because I thought he looked pretty ready to play. I mean, he's got to change his body. He's pretty, bottom heavy. His legs are pretty big. And he's kind of skinny at the top, which, he's kind of got the base of like maybe a Jokic and then the frame of like a Chet Holmgren, right? It's interesting, but he had a lot of blocks. He plays good defense. He has a decent shot. I mean, this guy could be a player if he goes to the right system and they develop. And he's again projected to be a second round pick. But the last player that had a standout weekend is the only player that is projected to be in the first round out of all the standouts from this weekend. And that's a guy that was drafted, and you brought him up, Darius Acuff. He is projected to be a first round pick. Currently has the sixth best player in the draft. And I think his stock is going to continue to rise, man, because that guy looks like he's ready, man. All right. So, but anyway, so any last thoughts on anybody else?
Yeah, he won't get drafted, and he's tremendously undersized. But I think his name was Rod Martin, the point guard from
Yeah, that dude looked good.
That dude had the
Yes.
heart of a lion, dude. Like I
Oh,
was just
dude,
enjoying watching him play, and I'm rooting for the guy, but
Same here.
obviously, he didn't have enough, but I'm not sure what his height is, but I'm gotta guess he's between 5'7" and 5'8", maybe. I don't even think he's 6 feet
He
tall.
looks shorter than that, man.
He is very
But he
small
was-
guy, but
Yeah.
he would attack the players. He'd create
Yes.
spaces. He'd drive. I mean, it wasn't just an outside shooter. He would attack the hoop. So just an honorable mention to him because I really thought, he was all heart. And hopefully maybe he can find something overseas. I mean, hey, you never know. We've had undersized players in the NBA before, but that dude definitely stood out to me just from his heart.
He left his heart out on the floor, and then of course when he realized that his team wasn't going to make, he got really emotional, man. You
Yeah.
love seeing that when guys
Yep.
are really into it. That's why a lot of people really prefer watching college versus the pros, is because these guys really care and they're playing their asses off, right?
Yep.
They have a lot of pride in their school and in their game, and you don't see maybe that as much in the NBA, like but the players in the NBA are the best of the best, right? but you just don't see that emotion typically, right? You don't
Well,
see many Russell Westbrooks out there, the guys who really, really
no,
their
you're
effort
right. And
into it, you know?
the thing that drives it, Eddie, is that some of these guys know this is the last competitive basketball they'll ever play.
Yeah.
And so their heart is in it to go as far as humanly possible. And you're right. I think there is an attraction to that,
Yes.
to watch their desire, so yeah, no, you're right. One of the exciting things about the tournament is that there's a lot of guys that put a lot of heart into it.
Yeah. I agree, man. I agree. And we got 2 more weeks of this thing, man, or
Yes, we
or
do.
3, or, 2.5 more weeks of this thing. So,
Yes,
and we're gonna see how our brackets continue to climb. You and I are in the same brackets pool, out of 25 people. I think you were 16th. I think I
yeah,
was 6th, right? But there's a lot of basketball left to play. And Florida getting eliminated really busted a lot of brackets in that. So,
yes,
and of course, Gonzaga getting eliminated too, right? So,
yep.
um, but anyway, bro, that's it for our show, man. It was a fun review of our NCAA first weekend. We did the brackets pools, and then we did our own little draft, and we kind of wanted to kind of review some of the players that are projected to be drafted and kind of the eye test, which ones we thought really stood out, which ones we thought really are not necessarily NBA ready, which are the guys that are standouts and they actually, are not necessarily projected to be, some of them are not even projected to be drafted, and second rounders as well. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and in the ensuing weeks, we're going to have a segment on this just to look at the stock of these players, right up until the championship game, and how much this top 30 list changes because of the draft. It does have a
that'll be
lot
fun
of
to watch.
influence on the stock of a player, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Agree.
any parting shots, man?
No, this is good. Yeah, I agree. I'd like to look and see how the stocks change as we go down the road and how much the NCAA tournament, impacts that. I will say one thing, and old man yelling at the cloud moment, it's really, you know, college really went from when we were watching in our heyday, where
Yes.
they're a lot of them are 4-year players. It was rare. Maybe you get a 3-year player. And I really enjoyed it then because you really got to know the team. You really it really became something. And then we went to the one and dones, right? So, I think maybe Kentucky started doing it, then others. And now it's gotten to another level where people go to a portal and they're on one team and then they're on the other. And then
Yes.
it's just really hard to get an allegiance to any school or any program. It just makes it really hard. Like seems like the NCAA is making your allegiances to a player, not to a team. And having played basketball my whole life, I'm team concept. I believe in the team concept. I believe in the front of the jersey. I'm a believer in all that. And it just makes it really hard. You're just kind of focusing on the players now, and it's really just fundamentally a farm system. And just my soapbox moment, I don't really like it. There's angles that are good. There's pros and cons to everything, but I just wish we could have a little bit more like the old days, where they at least would stay a couple of years, and then watch them play. But
No, I hear you. I hear you.
that's nice.
The transfer portal definitely has changed the landscape of the tournament as well as college basketball. NIL also has a big influence on it as well. Before we part it, I want to ask you, because you brought it up. You brought up Cameron Boozer not being that impressive. You also brought up that Duke, wasn't that as impressive. They have 2 bad games, essentially. We both picked them as the team to win it all. If you were to go ahead and redo it after watching the first weekend, which team to you but which teams do you stand out right now as the favorites to win it all?
I think Houston stands out.
I agree.
Yeah, Michigan stands out. Yeah, those are probably the 2 main squads that stand out to me that are like Michigan's size, they're just big, and so no, that's the 2 that I would go with.
Yeah, I was the same way. And I would say Illinois is another one that could potentially upset some teams. Those are the 3 teams that really stood out to me.
Correct.
Florida really stood out in that first game, right? But they were playing like a 16-team seed and they blew them out the water, right? The second game, it's like, whoa, Utah State, took them out. And I'm like, whoa, this team is legit now, man. So, but anyway, bro. All right, man. So that's it for our walk around the NCAA tournaments. Normally the walk around the NBA segment. This is Buzzer Beaters. I'm Eddie Aparicio. This is Anthony Toine Corral. We're also known as the Cisco Kidz, and we are brought to you by grumblingsmedia.com. You can find us there or wherever you get your podcast. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. If you like our show, please give us a thumbs up. We love your commentary. A lot of you are commenting. We respond, okay? So please continue to do that. And we're going to go ahead and go now to our next show, which we're going to go sign off here, and we're going to start the next one, which is our Warriors Talk segment. All right, everyone, have a good rest of the week, and we'll see you again next week. Take care, everybody.
Hey, everybody, this is William Del Pilar, founder of Grumblings Media, and I want to say thank you for watching our content. If you want to support our all-volunteer efforts at Grumblings Media, smash the subscribe button right here. 100% free, and please consume and share our great content. Click either one of these two boxes for more of our work.